We all experience change in our lives, some of us on a daily and weekly basis. If we deal with change so frequently, why does it make us kick and scream so much? This time on Thoughts on Change. Welcome to Thoughts on Change, the podcast about the messy, political, emotional, deeply human side of leading change. I'm Kelly, and I believe anyone can implement lean tools until they actually have to get people to use them. Around here, we talk about how to move culture, how to build credibility, and how to influence without bulldozing. Basically, how to herd humans without losing your mind. Every single one of us has had to grapple with change at some point in our lives. And for us change leaders out there, our job is to shepherd people through changes in the way they work. And every single time, it is so painful. Why? Today, what we're going to unpack is what's really going on that makes change hard for some and easier for others, and how we as change leaders can contribute both positively and negatively. Helping people through change at work is really hard. A lot of the time, people in our roles end up playing the part of emotional punching bag. Everyone working through their own feelings about the change lash out at us because we are front and center through it all. And it is easy to blame these people, right? To call them resistant to change and antibodies and whatever other name you have for them in your organization. But the problem with that is it doesn't actually help us when we're being pummeled by people who are struggling through change. So, what else do we do? What else do we need to do here? We need to think about people's reactions to change differently. We need to better understand why this is all happening. So, let's unpack what really happens when people experience a change. So, any single change is like a two-sided coin, right? Imagine you are a parent bringing home your newborn for the first time. On one side of the change coin, you now have this beautiful new life that you created, that you now get to take care of and introduce to the world. This child that you would do anything for. And on the other side of the change coin, you now have this screaming, pooping demon who, at a whim, will demonstrate to you that you don't know the first thing about what it wants and needs. If you are a parent, you probably have experienced both of these realities when your kid was a baby. And what's the key difference between when the change of having a new baby around was magical and when it was a nightmare? Well, the crying at 2 in the morning probably didn't help. In reality, any change can be taken as good or bad, or a mixture, depending on which side of the coin you're seeing. And this coin is the image and story in your mind about what this change will mean for you. If you see the positive side of the coin, you will more than likely be more excited and optimistic about the coming change. But if you see the negative side, you will be wary and anxious about the change. Your feelings about change are all driven by the perspective you take and the story you tell yourself about your life after the change has happened. Let's try it out. So imagine you choose to leave your current job for another opportunity. In this new position, your skills are put to the test and you learn and grow. You're recognized for your contributions, and the company shows you how they value you. You're probably really excited about this change. Now, instead, imagine that this new job requires you to work longer hours to come up to speed. You're thanked for all of your extra effort, but it doesn't go beyond that. You watch as other people work less hard and get the same feedback as you did. And you wonder why you are trying so hard. Now you're probably really unhappy about this change. This was the same fundamental change, leaving your job for a new one. But the future you saw for yourself was very different. This is exactly what happens for everyone with any change. We imagine what our future will be like in this new condition. Do we gain or do we lose? And unfortunately, for change that a person did not choose, like most of the ones we are shepherding people through at work, people most often picture a story where they lose. So, what happens when one person sees a negative story where they lose something, and we see a positive story where their work will be a little better? Usually, tension and conflict, and us pushing them through the change and them resenting us. This is where we generally use our change management skills. We try to guide people through the emotional process of accepting a change. But the problem here is that if we don't understand that this other person is grappling with the fear of loss, then all of our standard approaches can actually make things worse, not better. We can make them act out with even more resistance. If you're in this situation right now, take a break from trying to herd people through the change. Instead, try to reveal the root of their resistance. This is the third step in my transform framework. Revealing the root is all about getting to the fear of loss underneath all resistance. Here's how to approach it. First, list out what is really changing for those people that are resisting. Imagine those things did not change. What would that protect for those people? And then once you have that, think about without that protection, what would they lose? Here, think about things like their sense of autonomy, their sense of control, their authority, their purpose. When you can understand what they fear they will lose, you can start to piece together the future they are seeing for themselves. When you can see that, you give yourself the best opportunity to actually help them to see the other side of the coin. If you want to learn more about how to shift your change management approach to helping instead of pushing, stay tuned for the next episode of Thoughts on Change, where we'll dive in to the rest of my transform framework and the resistabots in you that are making change harder than it needs to be. That's a wrap for this episode of Thoughts on Change. If you're also out there trying to move culture instead of just installing tools, hit subscribe and share this with a fellow CI warrior. And remember, progress beats perfection, curiosity beats control, and culture beats everything. See you next time.